There's nothing more satisfying than to plant a young tree and then years later enjoy it as a mature specimen. Well, there are a number of things you can do to ensure that that tree will grow and perform the way you want it to. And with us today is Mark Bays. Welcome back to the program, Mark.
Nice to see you again.
Mark is our state community forestry coordinator, and Mark is just going to show us the correct way to plant a tree.
Right. Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here. And you know, what you said about enjoying a tree for a long time is something that we all need to think about whenever we plant a tree. You know, if you plant an oak or something like that, it's going to live for hundreds of years. So, you know, I think it's worth the effort to invest a little bit of time to do it right up front. I mean, if it takes 30 minutes, if it takes a half an hour, if it takes all day, I mean, that's a good return on your investment, I think.
So a job worth doing is worth doing right.
Absolutely, that's right. And I thought what I'd like to do is to take you through a few different planting techniques that we see a lot of. Kind of the old way that we used to think was, you know, we still see it today, the incorrect way, and then maybe even talk about the way that we would like to see more people do it. So,
okay.
The first thing that we'd like to show you is the old way.
All right.
And what we have here, the old way, is we didn't really know a lot about a tree's roots. And so what a lot of people like to do will, you know, they'll have their container that their tree has come in, and they dig a real deep hole, and they just get it real deep. And the thing about it is, because digging a bigger hole takes a little bit more time, well, we don't want to do that. We're just going to put this hole, we're going to put it in a small hole and put it real deep. You can see this hole here. I'm not going to take it out of the container, but this is the way what we used to see a whole lot. If we were to put the soil around this root system and everything, you know, you'd actually have that tree buried too deep, like 3 or 4 inches deep and everything.
I could see some people maybe doing this thinking that the water will collect there and they won't have to water it as much too, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of the early thinking was trees' roots, you know, will grow straight down, and so you want to get those trees' roots growing down deep to where the water table is and everything. We know now that mature trees, most of their roots are in the upper 2 feet of soil, so we know that planting deep is really not the best way to do it. Trees' roots need oxygen in the soil to help grow through. And one of the things that you can actually see as far as what might happen is, this is a poor little tree, bless his little heart, you know, I mean, he's no longer with us.
Didn't make it.
He didn't quite make it. But we were looking at it and we were wondering what the problem was with it. And this actually was grown right there where my glove is. So when we first came out and looked at that, what do you see here? Well, it's girdled. So the first thought was, well, you girdled your tree with a string trimmer. And that was the first thing we thought. And so we said, well, let's just go ahead and replant it. Okay, we figured this one out, case closed. Okay. As we started removing the tree, well, we found more, more tree. And we actually found this tree was buried probably 1.5 feet or so deep on that.
So the ground level was way up here.
The ground level was up here.
Goodness.
And so the tree's roots were down here, which is, you know, the level of the container where the tree was in. And so, you know, that was 1 foot deep. These trees' roots just suffocated. And that's what killed the tree. I mean, they actually just double killed it. I mean, they planted it too deep first of all, and then they girdled it. So
just to make sure it was dead, I guess.
That's right. But so that's one of the things that you don't want to do, is plant the tree too deep.
Okay. Those roots need that oxygen.
It needs air, yeah, to grow through. Then what we started doing is, you know, we wanted to. In Oklahoma, we have a lot of clay soils. This is particular sandy soil, so it's a little better soil than we normally see. But you know, we have a lot of clay in Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
And so the thought was, well, let's just really mix a lot of stuff in. Let's use peat moss. Let's put fertilizer in there. Let's really enrich that hole for that tree to grow into.
To give it a head start.
To give it a head start, if you will. That's right. And that's really the wrong way. You know, we saw the old way. This is really the wrong way for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you know, you don't want to trick that tree into believing that the soil that you're planting it in has all these wonderful nutrients in it. As that tree grows into that soil, particularly if it has a lot of clay in it, and it reaches that clay hard pan on the outside of that root ball, I'm just kind of wondering if those trees' roots would ever really want to get out into that natural soil. They might just continue to grow in that area where it's all enriched and everything.
So they would just stay in the good soil.
It might just stay in the good soil, that's right. The other thing too is some trees, like for instance, ball and burlap trees, if you fertilize it and do all that, that may stimulate a lot of top growth, and there may not be a lot of roots on that tree yet established to provide the water and nutrient uptake to, to provide those nutrients to a tree that has a lot of top growth on it. So you really don't want to be putting any kind of fertilizer or any kind of real like peat moss or anything like that in the soil. The best thing that research has really shown is that you should just put that native soil, for the most part, back into that hole. So don't worry about mixing in all these amendments into the planting soil. If you wanted to fertilize it, you'd probably want to wait at least 1 year before doing that.
Okay, and that'll save you a little bit of expense. You
True.
don't have to add all the peat moss or fertilizer and
That's right.
things like that.
Yeah. So that's the wrong way.
Okay.
Now let's talk about the right way.
Okay,
Like,
I'll grab the tree
over
here.
there. Yeah. We don't want to put them in that hole.
Nope.
Walk right by there. In Oklahoma, we have, you know, the clay soils and everything. So really the best way to give this tree a head start, like you mentioned earlier, is to dig more of a shallow hole, but a wide hole. You want to dig that at least 2 to 3 times, and some people in a real difficult soil will even go beyond that, you know, 3 to 5 times as wide. But if you stick with 2 to 3 times the diameter of the container or the diameter of the root ball in distance out, then you're going to be getting those trees' roots a opportunity to get out into the existing soil. What we have in urban areas, even in your backyard, just walking over it, our soils can be so easily compacted that what you're trying to do is you're trying to essentially fluff that up. You know, what do you do every year when you garden? Well, you till it and kind of fluff it up and everything. And that's what we're doing here for the trees as well. Trees are just big plants. So we're just tilling it up, fluffing it up, breaking up that soil, allow those trees' roots to grow away from that tree and become stabilized and naturalized into the soil.
And they won't be tricked.
They won't be tricked, that's right. So because we're not putting any amendments, we're not putting any fertilizers, we're not putting anything in the soil, we've broken that soil up in a wide planting hole, and then go ahead and backfill with just that native material that you have. You hopefully will have chosen a tree that's appropriate for your soil type in the area, and that's what's key too, is picking a tree that's appropriate for your soil types before you even plant it. And then, you know, then you don't have to worry about enriching the soil. So trees that can tolerate clay, go ahead and plant them if you have a clay soil. Before you even plant a tree, you might want to do a soil sample and you know, find out what the makeup of your soil is. And then from that, you could use that to choose appropriate trees.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Well, do we want to go ahead and plant this one?
Yeah, the one thing before we fill it up that I wanted to talk about is you don't have to dig it very deep.
Okay.
See this? This is only as deep as the level of soil in the pot.
Okay, and we're not going by the top of the pot.
We're not going by the top of the pot, we're going by the level of the soil.
Okay.
And even in that, what you may want to do before you decide how deep to plant your tree, you might even want to dig around and kind of look to see where you start getting into some of the bigger support roots. You don't want to just damage too many of them. You see that there's a few roots right here. So that's a few inches actually below the soil level that's in this container. So I'll cover those up like that. But what you want to do is find out where those roots are and make that the level that you're planting the tree. So that actually might even be an inch or so, you know, the roots might even be an inch or so below the level of the soil in the container here. So that's why you want to plant it up just a little bit shallow.
Okay.
In a real clay soil, it's even beneficial because, you know, the roots are a couple of inches below the level of soil here. It might even be a little bit beneficial to elevate that a little bit in the hole, you know, like maybe 20% or so of that root ball even above the soil in the surrounding area.
Okay.
And then berm the soil down away from it, because then those trees' roots in a clay soil won't get waterlogged, and you know, they'll be better able to get out into that upper layer of soil. The other thing in Oklahoma soils, you can kind of see right here, again, this is a sandy soil, but you can kind of see that's kind of glazed over right there. Now, if this was a clay soil, and you just, by running your shovel down through there, I mean, that's just going to be like a glazed over inside of a clay pot.
Yes.
So what you would want to do in that situation is just come in and just break up that root, or the soil around the root ball a little bit, and that way it's not glazed over, and as those roots grow out, they won't just kind of slip around that hole. They can kind of come in contact with that, and then they probably would be better able to grow through that into the surrounding soil. So if you do have a little bit of clay in your soil, just kind of come back in here and then just kind of chip it up and rough up that inside a little bit.
Make some little niches.
Right, right.
All right. Well, let's put this one to bed here.
Okay.
Well, Mark, now that we've got the tree in the ground, a layer of mulch, and this berm here will serve a good purpose. Is that right?
That's right. It's a great thing to have around a tree. We put the native soil in. We have the water berm around it, because when you water this tree in, which is the next step, you want to deeply water the tree. And so the best way to keep that water in place, to saturate that whole entire root system, is by building this water well.
Okay.
The mulch around here, you notice that we pulled it a little bit away from the bark of the tree. And the reason why that's important is that if it's up like this and it's continually wet, little fungus might grow on the trunk of the tree. The other thing is, during the winter months, you might have a mouse or something move in and build a nest underneath there, and at least that would probably prevent them from girdling the inside of the tree like that. So keep it a couple of inches back like that.
Okay, so it's also important to make sure we have a healthy tree to begin with.
Right. This is a wonderful specimen for a Chinese pistache. We really didn't talk about that, but that's certainly something that you would want to start off with, is a good, healthy tree to begin with.
Okay, well, we'll do a segment like that in the future.
That
Have you
sounds
back
great.
on the show.
Yeah. What we'll probably find is that trees come in all different kinds of containers. We planted this one today and it was in a plastic container.
Mm-hmm.
Trees also come in ball and burlap like this. And so if your tree comes in ball and burlap, what you would want to do is cut that burlap away from that root ball. We just removed it from the container. That's all this is, a container, just like that plastic. So just go ahead and cut it. That way the roots can get out in the soil a little bit quicker.
Okay.
Larger trees will have a wire basket on it. You want to absolutely at least remove it if you can, but cut at least the top half of this wire basket away from the root system of the tree. This is only to keep the root system in place around the tree while it's in transportation. And these baskets can actually girdle the tree's root as it continues to grow. So you do want to remove that, because you don't want your tree to look like this.
Okay. That poor thing.
I know.
Well, thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.